Seriously, why Freckles? Hi, I'm Kitty Monk, and I'm here to talk to you about Disenchantment. Or more specifically, the puppet Freckles. One of the most intriguing parts about Season 3, at least for me, was Freckles. He only appears for one episode, and even then he doesn't show up until the end of Act 2, but he captured my heart and my interest. In Episode 9, Zog's madness hits its peak. One mental breakdown later, and he can't even talk or honk. I know, the horror. His one joke this whole season, and he can't even do it now.
I can't barely honk no more. See?
Bean tries to help him, but to no avail. Through a series of events, Zog ends up in a puppet shop, which is run by Dagmar. Seriously, how'd she get a puppet shop? Did she kill the owners? Is it an illusion? Good ominous foreshadowing, but I need answers. Anyway, we meet one dummy in particular. Freckles. Zog gets drawn to Freckles like a magnet, and while he can't talk on his own, he ends up talking through Freckles.
Hey, watch it! That ladder's my uncle.
And he isn't letting Freckles go, so Bean reluctantly lets him keep it. I might be repeating myself again from last video, but like Zog's madness, Freckles is equal parts sad, equal parts funny. Again, it's sad to have to watch Zog talk for a piece of wood, and it's equally sad having to watch Bean humor him, but it's also hilarious to watch Zog have a go at Freckles.
I'm done razzing you buck-toothed gin junkie.
This show has a lot of great side characters that rarely appear, or they only appear for like one episode and that's it, like Tess or Old Man Touchy.
Touchy like.
Freckles is one of those characters, and I hope he gets another episode, or at least a cameo. Like maybe as part of the treatment they bring out Freckles. The Madness of King Zog is probably the most serious episode of the whole show, and Freckles gives it the comic relief it desperately needs, even the most serious scenes.
Dad, what'd you do with Freckles?
Hello, Bean. Did you miss me?
Oh!
What intrigued me the most about Freckles wasn't his humor, but his appearance. Although I won't pretend he's probably the funniest part of the whole episode.
You gotta make sure people don't go hungry. Ow! Oh! Ow!
This section might be one of those I'm just an English major who looks too deeply into it things, but bear with me. I found it interesting how Zog really liked Freckles. The episode implies Freckles might be possessed, and I'll discuss that, but I think there's another reason why Zog likes Freckles so much. Freckles, at least subconsciously, reminds Zog of him and his children, and it's all wrapped up into one dummy. It might seem weird, but apparently a reason why a lot of people like certain hobbies or pieces of art or songs is because they relate to it. If they don't realize why, it's because subconsciously. You might love superhero movies because Iron Man's funny, but subconsciously, you long for the escapist fantasy of a rich, wisecracking smart guy. Yeah, it's a little armchair Freudian, but Freckles shares a lot of the same physical traits with the royal family. First, let's start with Bean. Freckles gets his name because he has freckles, obviously. Bean has those too. And there's something not Dagmar mentions.
Though I wouldn't want to nurse that splintery wooden mouth. He's a biter.
This line is important. It might seem like it's just Dagmar getting really into the character, but it felt like a big callback.
I gave birth to you. I nursed you myself, with those teeth.
Zog obviously wasn't there when Dagmar said it to Bean, but he probably would be there when Bean was an infant being nursed by her mother. He could have seen Dagmar complain about stuff like that. On top of that, what Dagmar said could very easily mirror Zog's feelings about Bean.
He's a very naughty boy, but he's my favorite.
He was abrasive and rude to her all her life, but this season and last season made the point that even if Bean doesn't do what he wants, he still loves her.
It's me. Your favorite kid?
I agree with Dagmar. Bean is probably Zog's favorite, if only by a small margin. Come on, he never spends any actual time with Derek. I can count on my fingers how many interactions they have, and most of those are just cameos. Now that we discussed Bean, I want to move on to Derek. Obviously, like Derek, Freckles is a small child. Yeah, Derek's 14, but he's still treated and dressed like a 5-year-old. I think one episode even mentioned Derek's full title wasn't the Crown Prince Derek, but the Bonnie Prince Derek.
My name is Bonnie Prince Derek of Dreamland.
And let's remember that to your parents, you're always a little kid, no matter how old you are. If you change the color scheme from green to purple, it would be something Derek would wear. But there is one more trait they have in common. Dark, spiky hair. It's not the same color, but it is close enough. And now that we discussed the royal children, let's discuss Zog. The most obvious way Freckles resembles Zog is probably the color scheme. They're both wearing green with yellow accents. But there is one final trait they do share. The nose. Freckles has a big, prominent red nose. I mean, Zog doesn't have a red nose, but he does have a bulbous one. And so does Derek. It's probably the one thing they both share besides weight issues. This might seem, again, like I'm looking too deeply into it, but I think there's another reason why Freckles looks like that. Dagmar.
Bye, Freckles.
But why isn't this ever mentioned? Surface-wise, Bean and Zog would ignore it because they're Bean and Zog. And they're also royals who have tons of knockoffs on just the virtue of existing. Come on, let's be honest. There's a reason why a Canterlot wedding happened. Phew. But you get the idea. A lot went into Freckles. But there is one final idea about him I want to touch on. At one point, Bean puts Zog to bed, but when she says goodnight, it isn't Zog that answers back, but Freckles.
Good night, Bean.
Combined with who sold it to Bean, it led a lot of people to assume Freckles was possessed somehow. I'll be honest, I thought the episode was gonna say Freckles was possessed all along too, at least at first. I only say that because it reminded me of Flippy, a Jimmy Neutron episode. In the episode, he wants to perform with his dummy in front of the whole class. Only his act is super stale, so Jimmy makes a chip to improve his humor. But the invention backfires and Flippy gains sentience and slowly sucks away Hugh's mind. Like Freckles, Flippy has a lot of one-liners.
Don't even get me started what I gotta put up with to get my mouth to move. You think he can warm his hands up once in a while?
Eventually, Flippy tries to get rid of him once and for all. Because of that episode, I thought it was going to be something like Freckles was possessed, or he was sent by Dagmar to drain Zog of his life energy, or be medieval Chucky. If this was in episode 9, I can honestly see that going down. Still, I don't think Freckles was possessed. Even when Freckles talks back to Bean, you can still notice Zog is talking like he did before. Yeah, Zog's asleep, but I think it's more of a sign Zog's becoming dependent on Freckles, not Freckles is controlling Zog. Besides, I think if Freckles was real, he'd probably do more besides talk to Bean, like independent tasks. There's also the fact that when Bean throws Freckles under her bed, Freckles doesn't move or scream. In fact, Zog goes to get him back. Freckles doesn't walk back on his own accord or something. Not only that, but when Bean lets Zog get taken away, Freckles just falls to the ground. He doesn't react, he's just a lifeless puppet. They do hold on to the shot, but I think it was more symbolic, not foreshadowing. But while we're on the subject of possession, I do think something was possessed. And that wasn't Freckles.
Perhaps you'd be interested in this eyeless frog dummy.
It probably isn't, but come on. Dagmar really wanted Zog to have it. And eyeless Kermit looked cursed. I wouldn't be surprised if next season when Dagmar shows Bean her cards, she says something like, I meant that eyeless frog dummy for your dad, but I said it for Freckles. Come on, we all know the true villain of the show isn't Dagmar. It's eyeless frog dummy.